Hello, founders. Welcome back to the Gab Lab. We're here for part two of this fascinating episode, actually, on change management, aka putting out fires in business. How a lot of founders like to think of it, but Yvonne's here to make sure that we don't see them as fires and that we're taking a proactive approach. So, our Nail the Number Pro today is Yvonne Tevno. Tevano, I hope I've said that right, Yvonne. And Yvonne is an independent consultant and change expert, and we're so lucky to have her in the lab with us today. And now, as we move into part two, we're actually going to start to focus our discussion a little bit more on what we've been seeing, what you've been seeing, Yvonne, not what I've been seeing, but what you've been seeing and experiencing from the perspective of COVID and how it has impacted the customer experience for many of these business owners out there. So where should we start to dive in on this topic?
Well, I think it's hard to not broach this topic without talking about digital delivery, digital buying, digital payments, all aspects of the digital components, digital conversations and meetings and learning, the digital components that have absolutely changed the way businesses have been run in the past year. And I think in particular about aspects of things that we never thought we could do in a certain way or with a certain interaction capability. We have, because we've had to. And customers that never thought they would buy or services or product in a certain way have actually stepped into that again because they felt they had to, and then being able to start pivoting that into just doing business that way as well.
Isn't that the truth? Hey, necessity breeds that. It's the conduit to demand. Did I get that right? Necessity
is the
demand.
mother of invention.
There you go. There you go.
That's probably not, that's gender biased now, though. I guess it's necessity is the parent of invention.
Oh, well, and I think it's, what I've noticed here through COVID too, is that to your point about noise, it actually felt that through COVID, all of the noise actually dissipated. It became really focused on value and purpose and what's important, and all of this kind of superficial, oh, am I wearing the right shirt for the video, or the meeting has to be, edited a certain way. All of that went away, and it was just to show up and to serve and to provide value at a time when people were going through crisis and need and necessity. So yeah, and to that point, here we are in this digital world now, and I just read an article this morning that talked about how we won't see it go back to the way that it was, right? Digital is here to stay now. So in your line of work, how have you been preparing founders to kind of plan and adjust for this new customer experience now from a digital perspective? I'm sure there's other perspectives that you want to weigh in on.
So part of it is, you asked, how am I helping founders plan for this? Mm-hmm. And the truth is, right now, I would say we're not quite at that stage yet, at least, not in downtown Toronto where I'm based. We're still in a little bit of that reaction mode and kind of the steady state of COVID space. So, but that being said, that there will be this emergence, this leaning into the digital components of, and if I think about from a retail perspective, buying, pickup, delivery, aspects that, until recently, it felt like the only thing you could have delivered to eat was pizza, right? Like that was it.
Yes.
And now the ability and the range of food that a person can access in this way is like no limits. Aspects of monitoring and control. So people who work in plant-based environments that maybe, were not supportive of camera-based monitoring, okay, because it just feels so futuristic and
Yep.
Big Brother and spying and all the rest of that. The truth is that to be able to monitor teams and equipment through a remote mechanism actually gets you out of their face, which is sometimes a good thing, and also gives you an ability to gain different perspectives that may be useful for training, process improvement, all of those types of things. So benefits that are maybe being realized and not yet even being captured, because right now they're just foundationally part of how the business is being run and not yet being internalized as a choice. So a choice for survival today, but not necessarily a choice to enhance the consumer experience tomorrow.
Right. Okay. So more of a necessity
Yeah.
today to deal with crisis. And what I heard that was important in what there was lots that was important there, but what I extracted from that as well is that the customer experience also pertains to employees.
Well,
Right. It's the human experience, I guess. Right. Is that, would you agree with that or no? If I
well, your employees can be your biggest advocates for sure. And often the work that you do is a reflection of that client interface. So if you have a client experience that is dependent on someone other than you to deliver it. Many founders deliver their own client experience. So, let's set that aside for a moment. But if you are in an environment where you are relying on employees to deliver what you envision as your client experience, that employee's confidence in the company, ability to understand, the root cause for why activities are taken, how they themselves are feeling about their job and their work environment is really critical as part of that client experience. And case in point, through this time period, people who serve the public have been at different levels of comfort with that. And essential workers, people who are facing the public in a service oriented, whether they're the person that you pick up your product from or those types of things, they are in a client facing situation. And if they're nervous about their work environment or what this means to their health and safety, the health and safety of their family, you can expect that that is going to also reflect in how the clients feel about doing business with you.
Yeah. Okay. And so when you are working with a founder, then I just want to go back to that earlier statement too that you had made about right now at the time of this airing. Toronto is, I don't know, is it on its fourth lockdown or is it third? Or is it too gray now?
It's
Third. Okay. Yeah, here's hoping we don't get to a fourth. But what would your process look like then when you're in the middle, when a founder's in the middle of crisis? Your role is being able, your role as being able to come in and help them see the forest through the trees. And what would your process look like working with a founder in the midst of crisis as it pertains to this customer experience? How do you start to tackle these issues one by one in terms of helping this founder better cope?
I am quite an advocate of data and information and actually gaining that line of sight from a client. And particularly as clients are adopting new buying approaches, is helping them understand or articulate, how did that feel? Did you like it? Did you feel kind of like we were there with you, or did you feel alone? Not so long ago, I went to a website, and the website that I was going to purchase from and then pick up said, sorry, you're in line to be able to access my website. And I thought, wow, when did this happen? When did this start that you would wait
Wow.
in line online? So, what that really amplified for me was that your client experience is a function of all of those access points. Data would definitely tell that founder, that person utilizing that access point, that you had X people click and so many people abandon. And being able to watch and manage the trends in those numbers, just two numbers, click versus abandon, is a very, very insightful component, especially if it is a new access point for your business or something where you've exponentially expanded it because of the scenario.
Oh, so I love what it is that you're saying. It actually it mirrors and it echoes what one of our marketing experts has talked about before, where it's about measuring the marketing initiatives, and they talk about touch points. You're talking access points. It's the same thing. But what I think is so profound about what you're saying here is measuring data, and how many founders don't actually measure the data. So if I can, I'm just going to throw in here one of these one of the recommendations was about to your point, understanding every single touch point from start to finish. When someone's just become aware of you and is even looking to access more information on your company, I have never heard about that waiting line for a website. That blows my mind. That sounds, yeah, I'm sure there's a label for that, but but all the way through that entire customer experience, from the awareness to the engagement to the interest to actually being sold, then the fulfillment, then the retention, then the understanding every single one of those points. And to your point, making sure you can measure each one of those points, right? Is it a click? Is it a phone call? Is it, sorry, you want to jump in there and say something?
No, I'm delighted to hear that the message is coming through it. And I suspect some of the founders are going to be thinking, I don't have time to look at all that information.
You're right. But it's so easy when you set it up properly from the beginning. When you know that you have to measure it, then it's like, okay, well, hits on the website, to your point, right? And then the second touch point is, maybe it's, what is the call to action? Well, we want them to call us, right? So how many calls did you get? Or we want them to download this PDF. How many downloads do you get? But I love that you've brought up measurement, because you can't, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It's just, they go hand in hand.
And the beauty of, what can be measured nowadays is the whole leading and lagging indicators component. So leading indicators meaning what is implying that this change is taking hold. Lagging indicators, an indication of the change actually being captured in the bottom line. So either through revenue growth or cost savings. So a leading indicator might be something like, did my employees take the training or read the little brochure that came along with the new system? A lagging indicator might be, did they actually execute the sale or execute the activity through the system, or did they just sneak over and do it the old way because it was like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up? So your leading indicator really being, I believe that if they do the training, then they will have the skills and capability to be able to execute on the change, on the new equipment, whatever it is. Lagging indicator then being, did that actually happen?
Beautiful. So that's a term. So leading and lagging. It feels like, yeah, their entrance point and your exit point,
Yes.
right? And then being able to measure those. Is there any correlation in change management? I've heard the term of pushing forces and resisting forces.
Yes.
Is there any correlation? They might be two totally different things, actually, now that I think about it.
Well, I love that you've highlighted that model, because it can be an indicator in that when the world is moving us towards something, and people resist change. It's just human. It's human. We survive because we have a way of doing things. We've learned that works for us. So it is very human to resist change. So one of the concept of the force field theory is that when somebody's pushing and pushing to try to create a change, people will push back just as hard. So what you actually have to do is find a way to help them step out of that so that the change can go forward. So what do I mean by that? So you say, please say, when a client comes in, we really want you to say, is there anything else you need today? Because we want to be sure that if you're doing pickup, that you're only coming in once, because we know it's awkward and cumbersome and you have to park and all the rest of that. So that's what you want your employee to say. That's the change. And the employee's like, oh, I feel like an idiot when I say that. No, I really want you to say that. Well, why would I say that? I've never said it before. It's really important to our business right now. So by engaging that employee, by putting a tactic in place that helps them be aware that you want them to do that, to know why it's important that you want them to do that, and then to address their fears or the skills, capabilities that are needed in order to be able to do that, it can be an important step, an important learning. And so instead of pushing and pushing back, you have your change, they step into the change, and you'll be able to capture the benefits that are realized as a result.
So smart. I think you're absolutely right. I was just kind of thinking of several examples as you were talking about that. And the resistance is just to your point, because the owner or founder hasn't explained the rationale behind it too, right? And explored the discomfort and then found ways to actually address that discomfort for the experience of the employee, right? So that it becomes kind of intuitive for them or easier for them to be able to have those conversations.
Well, and another of there's key levers that are used in this kind of a change that ultimately benefits the client. So training is, I've spoken to it, communication is absolutely one. But one of the most powerful is the role of the leader. And in many cases, so particularly the direct leader, that's documented and reported, but also what is known as sort of the senior sponsors of the change. Now, in a business, the founder is often both the senior sponsor of the change as well as the direct leader driving the change. So when a founder says, we'd really like you to use a video conferencing format to interact with the clients, because it's going to create a level of person presence that we can't capture because they're not coming into our offices or our businesses right now. So we'd like you to use a video conference format. If they themselves don't use a video conference format, the employee says, wait a minute, you're saying it's important, but whenever I talk to you, you say, call my phone or text me. Not even a voice.
Yes.
Text me,
yes.
And I'll address your question. So the ability of the leader to say, oh gosh, I'm not sure how this video conference system's going to work, but I'm going to hold an all-employee meeting through my video conference, and I might click the wrong button and hang up on them and not hear my voice and not hear them. But I'm going to show that I'm prepared to try, to learn, and to also accept that it might not go smoothly, and to be able to show people that it's okay to stumble a bit when you're trying something new.
I love that. Walk the walk, right? Yeah, that congruency, so important. And so I'm wondering, Yvonne, as we wrap up this segment, when we started it, we were talking about the customer experience. We talked about one of the biggest impacts right now on customer experience has been this absorption of the digital era, whether it's communication, paying, buying, right, products. Are there any other touch points or impacts that you've seen in the customer experience that founders should just kind of be aware of and kind of taking into some of that change management strategy?
And I think this is where some of those unintended consequence components come into play. So a client has been tolerant, I would say, because everybody's going through change. And what we can expect is that as it becomes more the norm and the routine, a founder will be measured against non-competitors when it comes to their delivery choices and their delivery mechanisms and their delivery supports. So let's say that I have a certain experience from somebody who sells me product, the local car dealer. And then I have a certain experience from someone who sells me a service, um, the local car wash. And that somehow one of them finds a way to stay connected and to stay engaged with the clients through that journey, just through digital means, through touch points, through putting that personal, regardless of what is the limitations are physically, and the other one does it. So even though they're not in competition with each other, the client thinks, wow, it was so easy to do that. And this is so awkward and cumbersome. And they compare them and they set a benchmark in their mind, even though it is not a direct competitor, it is a competitor in context of the experience.
Wow. I've never even thought about it from that perspective, but you're absolutely right. Kind of feels like COVID is like one of these great equalizers that, to your point, regardless of what you're selling, the end experience is what customers measure.
A great equalizer and a great differentiator. And so that is the opportunity for
Wow.
founders, is to sit there with their client, not literally, but figuratively, to understand what that experience really feels like and why it feels that way. And then to lean into the parts that create that client loyalty, repeat buying behaviors, larger share of wallet, larger grocery cart, and to be able to understand it in order to be able to replicate it.
Oh, so powerful, Yvonne. And I think too, as we're closing out this segment, there's so many important pieces I've taken away from this, but definitely understanding the touch points of the customer, the access points, being able to measure it. And then to your point of, grabbing the data, but in a way that makes it meaningful for your business. So it's not just about measuring the numbers, but to your point of reaching out then to the customer and asking them about their experience. And you said this so beautifully. How does it make you feel? Right? How did that make you feel? And leaning into that, not being afraid of those conversations, because some parts might not have felt well or good to the customer, but then being able to understand why that was so that you can make the necessary adjustments on the other side, right? And then plan proactively to be able to address that. So powerful. So
Thank you.
powerful. Thank you. All right. So as we're dishing out gratitude and appreciation, I just want to take a moment to thank our champions of this episode, Community Future Sunrise. And Yvonne, I don't know if we had this conversation, but this is a community in Saskatchewan, the southeast part of the province, that has gone through so much change. Before COVID, they were dealing with a coal transition strategy. So you had a heavily resource dependent town that was trying to figure out, well, how, now that this resource is gone, how do we maintain our businesses? How can we start to adjust and look at new market opportunities? And then COVID hit too, right? So talk about thrown into the fire on that one. So Community Future Sunrise, thank you for all that you do. And Yvonne, thank you so much for being in here for part 2. And we're going to come back for part 3 of the Gab Lab, where we're actually going to talk about operational efficiency and how COVID has really kind of shined a light on how we as founders can become more efficient and effective in our day-to-day operations in business. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you back in here for part 3 of the Gab Lab. See you soon.